Hey, welcome back, folks, to Max Nave Horsemanship. Now, I don't have an actual title for this one yet in my mind. I know what I want to do, but I don't know what to call it because it's going to be a lot of different things combined. And, well, to give it just one topic or one title or something might be a little misleading, and I wouldn't want to do that to you. But I'm going to talk about how you have to adjust yourself to the individual horse, because in a minute I'm going to do a little bit of a demo with a horse that, well, probably isn't exactly the best one to be doing a demo with, because she's already well trained and very sensitive, and this kind of stuff is hard to really demonstrate on a horse that knows it really well, because it's something that is probably more important. It's always important, but it's more important with a horse in its early stages of training. And that's where you kind of figure out what the horse needs and what you have to do. It's kind of got to do with the amount of pressure that is needed to get the results you want. Just what do you have to do with a given horse in order to get results? And in the past, I've had horses that varied from you could just look at them and they'd do what you want, to ones where you just about have to break a 2x4 over their head. Okay, that's a bit of an exaggeration, and I'd never do that to a horse, but you get the point. There's extremes in some horses, and there was actually one I worked with that it was one of my own too, and I had to get quite firm with him, and I found that a little disturbing because it's just not in my nature to get that firm with a horse. I didn't want to have to, but with that particular horse, that was what was necessary. Now I'm going to demonstrate in just a second here what you need to do and how to go about it in order to figure out what your horse needs. Okay, we got a horse here that I've mentioned before how sensitive she is. So she's not going to be a really good horse for this demonstration, but I think I can show you what we're doing and basically how to get there. Now, you notice I got in my hand a flag. Now, in early stages of training, you would be using a flag or perhaps a training stick, whatever your choice is, whatever you're comfortable with and whatever you know how to use properly. Shortly after the beginning, we don't even use this anymore because there's a little too much pressure here. Actually, just about every horse in the herd except for her that has been desensitized to it, if I wave this thing, they'll go running. Later on, I like to just use the end of my lead rope and just spin it a little bit. Sometimes I can just kind of put my hand out. Various forms of pressure at various levels, and it all depends on what the horse needs. And even within one horse, that's going to vary a little what the horse needs depending on its stage of training. But initially, it tends to, until they get the idea what you want, you sometimes have to use a little more. And this is where you have to figure out just what does your horse need, because every horse is different. Now, when I start out, I usually use a flag in the beginning because I know I'll get results with it, because one of these things is capable of putting a lot of pressure on a horse. And not that I really want to, but sometimes you need to in the early stages. But I've said, many times in my videos, I've made the comment about you use as much force as necessary, but no more than necessary. And, well, the same as, that really means pressure. When I say force, I'm not talking about force, because if I was to get into a tug-of-war with this horse, I don't stand a chance. I did a video a while back on that one, and I put a link to another video where I think it was 16 guys had a tug-of-war with one Belgian horse. The people lost. 16 people couldn't compete with one horse. So using force to accomplish anything is not going to work. And punishment, well, I'm going to do a video on that one someday too. Punishment doesn't work either. But if I want this horse to move, I'm going to start off with my flag. And you'll notice I'm holding it behind me, the way I'm holding it. Now, as I want her to respond, now, I know she will. She'll do anything I want, but I'm just doing this for you, okay? So you pay attention to this. I'm going to slowly bring the flag over, and as it gets closer to her, Now she's been desensitized to it, so I can actually just throw it over. I can do anything I want. Because I haven't asked her to do anything yet. And I had a good question once. How does the horse know when the flag means something and when it doesn't? And I kind of thought about that one because I never really gave it much thought before. And it's context. You always ask for something first before you employ the flag. And that way the horse knows, okay, they asked me to do something. Now they're getting serious because they brought out the flag. So if I ask her to move around me, I'm going to ask her to move first, then I'm going to use the flag. But I'm also going to figure out just how much I need. How close do I have to get? How hard do I have to wave it? A little bit? A whole lot? You know, because with some horses, you got to get pretty big with the flag. And by big, I mean like you stand up tall and wave it hard and high and, you know, like big strokes. You make lots of noise with it. You can hear it probably picking it up on the mic. You can hear the noise this thing makes. You know, and for a horse that's not used to it, that can really have an effect. Now this one here, as you can see, she doesn't care because I haven't asked her to do anything yet. She's just standing here minding her own business, and what I do with this flag means absolutely nothing to her right now. And eventually that's what you want too. But for now, we want her to think this flag actually does mean something. So I'm going to ask her to move, and unfortunately she's probably going to move without the use of this flag. But I'm going to show you kind of how to do it. First you ask the horse to move, which in this case I just put my arm out. Then I bring the flag out, and that was actually perfect because she was just a little bit reluctant there to move, and that was excellent. And right there is good. Perfect. Now, that just gives you an idea. You saw how I brought the flag in. I didn't come in real hard, waving it hard or anything like that. I just brought it in nice and slow and gradual. And in her case, I didn't even have to wave it. I just had to bring it in. And she understood what I wanted. And now I'm going to repeat the process. And I'm not going to, if I don't need to wave it, I'm not going to. Because you don't use more than you need. You know, it's like... there's an old saying, it's been around for a long time, if you train a horse with a shout, it'll never respond to a whisper, because all it knows is shouting. And well, this one in particular, she gets kind of offended if you shout at her. She does not like strong cues, or as I consider, I refer to them as loud cues, is where you're really, really firm with her, where you squeeze hard, you pull hard on the reins, or anything like that. She doesn't like that, and she'll actually take offense to it. If she knows what you want, she's willing to do it. And eventually that is the state that you want to get to. But at any point in your training, you do not want to exceed what is necessary to accomplish what you want. And that, you know, whether you're using a training stick, your flag, or even your rope, because I do that too, and I'll just throw the flag away, give you a little demo on that one. Don't need that. And in fact, with her, most of the time I probably don't even need to do this, but I'm going to ask her to move, and if she doesn't move, I'm going to start spinning this towards her backside. But you'll notice that she's not too concerned about it right now because I haven't asked her to do anything yet. I can stand here and swing this rope all day long, and she's going to ignore it because it means nothing unless I tell her something first. I make a request or whatever, then it means something. So I'm going to ask her to move. Oh, she doesn't want to move. She's thinking about it a little bit. But we're going to get serious here. And we're going to start moving in. There we go. Had to use very, very little. You saw how little we had to use. We didn't have to use a whole lot. So it just shows you, you know, the minute she started moving, I stopped spinning this thing immediately. And the same would be true of your stick or your flag or anything else you're using. The minute you get a result, you know, this is part of timing. Now, it's not critical that it's like nanosecond timing, but the minute the horse does what you want, leave it alone. Stop nagging it. Don't bug it. Don't keep cueing it, because it's already doing what you've cued it to do. And if it doesn't get release of pressure immediately when it does the right thing, it thinks, well, that must not be the right thing, so maybe I shouldn't be bothered to do it. Because, well, that's not what they want, obviously, because the idiot's still waving that flag or stick or rope or whatever when I do it. So I guess that's not it, right? So that's where it's important that the minute the horse does what you want it to do, stop asking. And as long as it continues to do it, you don't ask again. If it stops and you want it to continue, if it stops without you asking, then you have every right to say, hey, get going again, and you can use your flag, your stick, your rope, whatever you're using, again, to continue the movement. But I haven't, see, I was sticking my arm out. She thinks I want her to go the other way now. But that's not what I wanted. I didn't want anything, actually. But she's paying attention to me now because I actually did make a couple of requests. She's tuned in now. She's on, in work mode, shall we say. So she's ready to do whatever I ask her to do at a moment's notice, no matter what that might be. I'm just going to ask her to back up a little bit here because she's between me and the camera. Good girl. It's that easy once you get the hang of it. Once they understand what you want, they're perfectly willing to do it. And that's why you have to make sure you don't abuse your cues, whether it's your flag, your stick, your rope, or anything else that you're using, or lunge whip, or whatever. Do not exceed what is necessary. Otherwise, pretty soon they won't work. And I've seen it, even in when it comes to, say, parenting or something, is if they don't follow through and they ask for something, pretty soon the kids will just laugh at them and ignore them. And that's not an exaggeration. I've literally seen that happen, where the kids laughed at the parents and ignored them because they knew darn well the parents were not going to follow through. They're going to sit on the other side of the room and yell and swear at them, but not actually do anything. And, working with your horse is absolutely no different. But you have to be willing to follow through. You have to do what is necessary to achieve what you're trying to get. But don't exceed that. Like I said, whether it's your flag, your stick, your whip, your rope, or anything that you're using, whatever you're comfortable with and know how to use, don't exceed what is necessary. And take your time to figure out what gets a result from the horse you're working with. Now, with this one, because she's well seasoned, we've done lots of stuff with her. The flag really doesn't do anything unless I make a request first. And that's the important thing, is what you want to do is, you escalate your pressure. The first thing is your cue that you want, which in my case is, I just want to be able to point and have her go. I want to be able to just put my arm out and have her go. Are you going to? Oh, there we go. Eventually, that's what you want. But if she doesn't respond immediately when you do that, you're going to have to follow up with something else. And in the early stages of training, depending on the horse, you might have to get pretty big. With some horses, even a flag might be too much. Maybe a training stick might even be too much. Sometimes all you got to do is put your hand out, and that puts pressure on the back hand and makes it move. And I've done that with this one several times. And in fact, she doesn't mind if I do that, but if I actually touch her, she gets kind of upset and she'll actually swat me with her tail. Like I said, she does not like loud cues. And that's what you have to learn. What does your horse need? They're all different. And even at different stages of the training, they have different needs. And you got to get it all figured out and work accordingly. So remember, use as much force as necessary, but absolutely no more than necessary. And sometimes that's not very much, depending on the horse. Depending on the horse, or depending on the level of training and where it's at. And I say with this one, she's done enough stuff, and she's a very sensitive horse anyhow, so it doesn't take much. Most horses, you're probably only going to need to actually use the flag. I would carry it with me for quite a while, but I very seldom ever use it. But actual use of it, depending on the horse, might only be the first 20 minutes until the horse starts to understand that, when you ask for something, you're serious and it must submit to your requests. After that, you don't need it anymore. But with some horses, maybe you're going to have to carry that flag around with you and occasionally use it for the entire life of that horse. I don't know. Some of that depends on how consistent you are. Some of it depends on the individual horse. Like I said, no two are alike. And, well, this one is an exception to a lot of rules as well. I don't expect your horse to be like this horse and as sensitive as she is or anything like that. This horse is actually quite remarkable in many ways, and she is such a horse I would not recommend her for a lot of people, only because I understand her personality and her nature and how to deal with her, that her and I get along okay. But for a lot of people, no, this definitely would not be the horse to have. That's why when I downsized, this is the one I kept, because I knew darn well that, well, she's kind of special to me. I'm quite fond of her. And I also knew that there's probably nobody else out there that would really understand her as well as I do. So there you go. So back to what we were talking about, the cues and, you know, the follow-ups, whether it's, like I say, whether it's your flag, stick, rope, whatever you're using. Don't use any more than you have to, and quit using it, because you'll find that eventually, you know, when you make a request of the horse to move a certain way, and then you follow up with a flag, each time you won't have to get as close with it, and eventually you won't have to use it at all. You can just bring your hand up, and the horse will do what you want, and or your rope or whatever, you know, and eventually just your hand, and you know, so you gradually downgrade, but your initial cue is always going to be the same, and that's going to be the softest one. That's the one you want to eventually end up with nothing but, is this very soft cue that says, I'd like you to move this way, dear. And as you can see, I got the rope just hanging over one finger. You come back this way, and we'll just stop you right there. Good girl. And that's how you get there, is by knowing when to back off and do the right thing, and don't use that flag or stick or rope any more than you have to, and eventually you will get there. This is what you'll get. I've achieved this with virtually every horse I've worked with. I know it's possible, it can be done, but it all starts at the very beginning in figuring out what the horse needs and how much pressure you have to put on to get results, and then never exceeding that. And like I said, you got to be careful. You know, some horses, you know, when you bring that flag up, don't just come running in like a lunatic. Bring it up nice and slow, and get it closer to the horse, and then start waving it just a tiny bit, and then a little more and a little more. Gradually up the pressure until you get results. Eventually, you're not going to have to use it at all. But in the beginning, you got to figure out what's necessary. And then, like I said, that depends on the level of training and the personality of the horse. There you go. Have a good day.